supposed to hit that so out back they know we're going to begin. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome you all this evening. This is the superintendent's night for us to bring someone forward. On the agenda this evening, if I can find it. Thank you. We're going to start off with Ms. Angela Forster Davis. She's coming to us to represent the search committee. She's going to give a summary and introduction of the finalists. Then we'll have an opportunity as a school committee to interview the candidate for the position of superintendent of schools. And then we'll have deliberation on the election of the superintendent. At the back of the room there is some paper, and if people have questions they can put them on that and send them up to us. We will be asking and doing the interviewing this evening, and if there is time and if questions aren't similar to what we've already asked, and if time allows, then certainly we will try to answer as many questions as possible. So, Ms. Davis.
Thank you. Madam Chairwoman, members of the Foxborough School Committee, faculty, administrators, parents, and students, good evening. My name is Angela Forster Davis, and I am here to address you in my capacity as the citizen at large and parent representative serving on the Foxborough Superintendent of Schools Committee. I am here this evening to deliver an assessment of our search and to introduce the committee's recommendation for the next superintendent of Foxborough Public Schools. These are my qualifications to serve on the committee as a parent and a citizen at large. I am a Foxborough native and attended Foxborough Public Schools. Our public schools cultivated and strengthened my commitment to music and the arts. And so I went on to major in music, business, communications in college before earning a master's in business administration. I have spent 20 years working in higher education at a world-renowned music college in Boston. I have spearheaded searches, participated as a member on numerous search committees, as well as focus groups and strategic planning task forces. In addition, I am presently a VO Leadership Fellow. This fellow position was created to honor the memory of the late Susan Vo, Vice President of Wellesley College. My fellow position focuses on the study, development, and process of leadership. I have also spent 17 years studying and researching leadership through grad work and professional involvement. So I am most interested in the topic. My concern for the future of the educational system in Foxborough and the gratitude that I feel towards the teachers and administrators in this town was impetus for me to become involved in the search for a new superintendent of schools. There is also another reason that I am very interested in this process as the citizen at large and parent representative on the search committee. My husband Michael and I are raising our 2 young children here, and both will attend the Foxborough Public Schools. Hence, I am a representative of one of the largest stakeholder groups in this town, the parents. Lastly, public service has been a commitment of my family since I was a young girl. Those are my credentials that may pertain to sitting on this committee, and I will tell you that it was an honor to be allowed to serve alongside a group of such dedicated professionals from our schools. The search committee consisted of 13 members: Fran Stillwell, Doreen Bentley, Claudia O'Leary, Don Faulkner, Bert Delaney, Jerry Roy, Patty Young, Michelle McCarthy, Betsy Acoyne, Ted Haggerty, School Committee Woman Katie Adair, and School Committee Chairwoman Martha Slattery. Chairwoman Slattery and I served as co-chairs. Each of the committee members demonstrated commitment to their professions, compassion, respect, and trust. Each of you has forged the beginning that the focus group said they were looking for, demonstrating trust, respect, commitment, and openness. Our first order of business was to review the feedback from the various stakeholders in this district. With steady guidance from Glenn Kuchar of the Mass Association of School Committees, we were able to clearly understand our charge as a group, how we were to conduct our process according to guidelines, and proceed in the very best and fair manner. You see, it was a goal and desire of every person on that committee to do what is right and be led through a democratic and fair process. And while we expressed with respect and trust in each other our differing opinions on many occasions, the trust and respect was a continuum under which we operated, and we found ourselves moving collaboratively towards a shared goal. We met for a series of meetings, and our premise was to take all the time we needed to conduct a search in a comprehensive and thorough manner. We had a clear understanding of what the needs were in the district, thanks to the focus group results and feedback. Also, the committee members have had hundreds of conversations with parents, students, their colleagues, and they are fully aware of the challenges that have faced Foxborough. They are the veterans who operate in the schools every day, making this the desirable school district that it is. And I must say that there were no surprises in the focus group or the survey feedback results. From there, we were able to isolate reoccurring themes and be sure that they stayed in the forefront of our minds as we combed resumes for the specific skills and demonstrated credentials we wanted our next superintendent to possess. Tough choices needed to be made, and change is daunting. It brings with it anxiety and a rush of concern. But if you believe that people are inherently good and choosing to operate off of that premise, you lay the groundwork for making the honest and the right decisions, the decisions for the district that are the best ones. This search committee did just that. It was not without heated discussion, a myriad of emotion, and deep concern for the future of our children. Our search committee process was tightly organized, structured, yet organic and raw. We could not proceed without honoring our history and our experiences, as well as the needs of the larger school community. As unique and rich as our individual paths have been, we collectively forged a very strong sense of what was necessary to do, the work that lay ahead, and acknowledged that we wanted the very best at what we do here at Foxborough. That, I believe, was the tipping point in our laying the groundwork to move forward correctly, diligently, deliberately, and determined. We realized that we needed the very best leader to guide our system, and we could not accept adequate or moderate credentials or skills. And to do so would translate into forfeiture of Foxborough being an exceptional educational district. I would like to publicly acknowledge the confidence and the trust put in this group by Chairwoman Slattery, to whom we owe a debt of gratitude. She cultivated a safe and trusting atmosphere, and she set the tone. She encouraged the tough conversations and the dialogue, and she allowed the group to steer the course. She, along with Katie Adair, deserve much credit, for they provided us with trust and the freedom to speak honestly. We will always be grateful to you both for your steadfast guidance. Yours is not an easy job, and you do it selflessly and for the right reasons. I commend each of you on the search committee for your strength and your vision. And in each of you, I recognize a desire to be the very best at what you do. And it is because of that desire that we need a strategic leader to implement the strategic plan and to put the initiatives into place. It is only with a clear vision and ambitious initiatives that we will arrive at the place where the committee believes Foxborough wants to be, making that leap from good to great. Good to great author and Harvard leadership guru Jim Collins has said, level 5 leaders channel their ego and needs away from themselves and into the larger goal of building a great institution or company. It is not that they have no ego or self-interest. Indeed, they are incredibly ambitious, but their ambition is first and foremost for the institution and not themselves. This statement made by Collins has deep meaning, and it is particularly appropriate as the search committee moved forward with careful analysis and deep thought about the charge that we were given. We all reflected on the focus group input and the good dialogue that needed to happen to carve out a listing of those qualities that were identified as must-haves for the next leader of the Foxborough School District. We thoughtfully acknowledged the necessity for someone to have the ability to forge a new culture, embracing those humanistic qualities that would make all stakeholders feel invested and respected. Of equal importance, we wanted the next superintendent to be innovative, forward-thinking, and the very best in the field. We wanted our next leader to bring the Foxborough schools to the next level, from good to great. We all agreed we wanted that next superintendent to be exceptional. It was clear that nobody on the committee wanted Foxborough to be a proving ground for a candidate. We wanted somebody who has not only been a superintendent for years, but has executed the position with accolades, has the awards and recognition to prove it. We did not want to leave anything to guessing. We were looking for a heavy hitter, or as Harvard's Jim Collins would say, a demonstrated level 5 leader. Good or adequate is not an acceptable standard. We have high standards for ourselves and our children. We want someone leading us who has high standards for the strategic plan and the vision of our educational structure and future. It is for that reason, with great confidence and vigor, that the search committee is putting forth one candidate that meets all of our challenging criteria. This is, without a doubt, the best candidate to take Foxborough Public Schools to the next level of excellence. Our committee voted unanimously to put forward Dr. Christopher Martes as the candidate to be Foxborough's next superintendent of schools. Dr. Martes received a doctorate in philosophy from Boston College, focusing on curriculum, instruction, and school administration. He also has a master's in education and a bachelor's in elementary ed. He has presided over the Framingham School District as superintendent of schools since 2003. During that time, he has received many honors in his career, including a significant one from the Department of Education, chosen to have a compass school at all 3 levels, and has functioned as a demonstration site for school systems across the Commonwealth. His district is the only district in Massachusetts to have the elementary and middle school principals of the year for the same year, 2005 through 2006, which speaks volumes about his leadership capacity. Recently, the Center for Ed Policy at the UMass campus studied his district leadership team after having identified the school district as an outperformer in relationship to its demographics. Prior to Framingham, Dr. Martes led the Medfield Public School System, and he has also been executive director of the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents, and received the prestigious President's Award from the Mass Association of School Superintendents. He has also worked as a director of personnel for Brookline Public Schools, as a principal in Newton, Massachusetts, as well as Rye, New Hampshire. He was also interim principal at the Burrell School here in Foxborough from 1982 to 1983, and got his start here in Foxborough as a 5th grade teacher at the Lewis School from 75 to 82. In addition, he serves as adjunct faculty at Cambridge College, and he has served at UNH as an adjunct professor as well. He is a scholar, a researcher, a teacher, and a mentor to many, and a family man. He has overseen completion of a 4-year, $60 million renovation of Framingham High School. He has forged and created mentoring programs for new superintendents. He has experience developing top-notch leadership systems and developed strategic plans notwithstanding successful implementation. He has created data benchmarks, and he is aggressive in recruiting talent. He was raised in Foxborough and graduated from here. Foxborough is a special place to Dr. Martes. He has the proven ability to address the needs of the students, faculty, administrators, parents, and other stakeholders in this district to foster a new culture that includes standards of educational excellence, trust, collaborative spirit, respect, and encouragement that everyone in the schools deserves. The Foxborough community has a unique opportunity to acquire a superintendent of schools who is the very best in the business. Accolades belong to him. His standing is at the top of his profession. We want to be the best, but it is not enough to want to be the best. We need a strategy to be the best and a demonstrated leader to implement a strategic plan and harness our strengths to reach our goal. We have found that leader. It has been a pleasure to serve with you, Madam Chairwoman Slattery, and it has been an honor to serve the school district of Foxborough. And now, I am most pleased to introduce to you the very best candidate for the position of Superintendent of Foxborough Public Schools, Christopher Martis.
Thank you, Angela. I think you very eloquently expressed how the committee felt about this candidate. At this point, I would like to allow us to interview Dr. Martis, and if you'd like to start off with some opening comments, we'd appreciate it.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the search committee and Angela for those kind words. I actually invited my wife to join me tonight so that she could relay the rest of this to my family, who often don't think as well of me. So Maureen, thank you for coming tonight. I'm very excited to be here tonight. At this point in my life, at this point in my career, I've had some great opportunities to choose what I'd like to do and the types of work that I'd like to be involved in, and this really became the important goal in my life, because I think that and I said this to the screening committee, and I think sometimes it sounds a little hokey, a little corny, but there are rare opportunities that you have in life to give back to a community or to a group of people who have really given me a lot. And I think, as all of you know, just in looking at the types of work that I've accomplished, it all started here. It all started in this town. It all started with people caring about me and kind of nurturing me and making sure that I was a success. I mentioned looking back on some of the people who really helped me when I started teaching and when I started as a principal. Troy Earhart, who I thought was really a terrific superintendent, one of the first mentors that I had. I look back on Bill Rex, who was a longtime principal here, and Frank Toomey at the Ahern School, and George Bedrosian at the Lewis School, and others who, it seemed to me as I look back on it, just wouldn't let me fail. Even as hard as I tried to fail it on occasion, they just wouldn't let me, and they were just great to me, and it was a real springboard in my career. I also look back on that and think that one of the real disappointing times in my life early on was when I found out that Bob Weiss was coming back as the principal of the Borough School, because I was an interim principal, and as I started, after a few months, I said, well, maybe he'll decide to do something else, and I can stay as the principal of the Borough School. That would be great. But as I look back on it now, Bob coming back was maybe the best thing that happened to me, because it allowed me to look at other places and be involved in other places and learn. And I've had the opportunity to work in a lot of great school systems. Rye, New Hampshire is a terrific small place. The Newton Public Schools and the Brookline Public Schools are very, very well renowned. An opportunity to lead Medfield as a brand new superintendent was a terrific opportunity. I mentioned to the screening committee that my career took kind of an odd turn, something I didn't think about. I knew I wanted to be a superintendent and thought that I'd be a superintendent for a long time. Never thought I would lead the statewide Superintendents Association. That was something that I was recruited into, and was a great opportunity to widen my horizons and get to know the state and national scene, and that was fun. All the while wanting to be a superintendent again. I really like to do this work day to day. I think making a difference in the lives of people in the community is really where my interest lies. So it's a great pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to this dialogue.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We'll start off with Larry.
All right, thank you, Martha. Well, welcome back to Foxborough, where it all started for you.
Thank you.
There are a number of critical areas that I hope that we'll cover as a committee tonight. They were covered in the focus groups, but since this is one of our three most important duties as a school committee, I think it's important for us to be comfortable as well. So I'm hoping that tonight we'll explore with you your competencies in the area of strategic planning and district improvement plans, curricular and how to better prepare our students for life after school, your communication skills with students, teachers, administrators, the school committee, and the public at large. I hope we'll talk about leadership and teamwork, your fiscal management, and I hope we'll cover your experience in school operations. So my first question, when I looked at your resume, I see that about every 5 years you seize a new opportunity. And when I look at my own career, about every 5 years I've seized a new opportunity. And many studies show that's about the time when people feel as though that they've accomplished a lot of what they set out to do and they're looking for some new challenge. So would you share with us tonight, maybe looking back at your 5 years in Framingham, one or two of the more significant accomplishments that you're the most proud of? Explain why you picked those two, and share with us the competencies that you think it demonstrated to accomplish those two goals.
Sure. The first one that I think of is actually just beginning as a superintendent in Framingham. The 16th largest school district in the state, and with a lot of challenges, and felt that coming in, I inherited a system that had been through 2 or 3 very difficult budget years, had actually closed one of their 9 elementary schools, and all the heartache that goes with that, and redistricting, and looking at staffing and all of that, and felt that that the school district really needed a shot in the arm, and really needed a real collaborative approach so that we could begin to define how we could be better and better and better. At the same time that they closed the school, they closed the budget out and found a surplus. And so that our credibility as a school district with the public, and particularly with the municipal officials, was severely at risk. So one of the things that I was most proud of early on is we with the other leaders in the district, particularly our finance office, we worked closely with the town, and we really opened up our budget and opened up the books so that people felt comfortable. We explained why we felt that we had a surplus at the end, and what we were going to do with that, and how we were going to work together with all the municipal officials. So, I made a presentation early on to town meeting, which in Framingham is a representative town meeting, and worked closely with the finance committee, closely with a lot of town meeting committees. There are a number of town meeting committees, one about education, one about ways and means, and also worked closely with the town manager and the board of selectmen, so that they clearly found out early on that our leadership style was open. We answer questions, we're willing to meet with people, and we're willing to collaborate on whatever needs to take place. So I think early on we were able to do that, and it really paid off. So we were able then to build budgets in a very credible way, which I thought was really the underpinning of us being able to do anything to move forward. The second thing that I did, and I know that Angela mentioned it, and I had mentioned that book, Good to Great, that kind of guides a lot of my thinking, is that I had an opportunity to put together a leadership team, and had an open position in curriculum and professional development. And we were then hired a person who had actually been doing a lot of work in math and science in southeastern Massachusetts, who was doing a terrific job, who actually started her career before I started at the Lewis School, which was kind of an odd thing. That she's been doing great work. We launched a mathematics initiative. We've been doing a lot of curriculum work in making sure that our math curriculum ties to the frameworks. We've built our own benchmarks so that we can assess how students are doing, along with MCAS testing. So we've become more data-driven, in terms of, and we've done a lot of professional development. So I see the municipal side and the work that we needed to do to build credibility in the community as a school system as being very important early on in Framingham. And I think driving our initiative through a lot of planning, particularly in mathematics. We've then adopted a literacy goal in the last couple of years, but particularly in mathematics. And our issue in Framingham is closing the achievement gap between our majority kids and our minority kids. And we have a number of minority kids, Latino, Brazilian, Portuguese speakers, in our black population. So we have had a lot of work to do, and we've had some. I think it's a long-term project. We've had some moderate success. Our 10th grade MCAS scores, both in English language arts and mathematics, we've seen some gap closing in that, and we're really doing a lot of analysis. So I see two areas. I might be able to think of 10 more, but I think those two really come to mind right away.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Beverly, do you have a question?
The arts, education, and young people have been my entire life, so it flashed at me when you said one of your purposes and goals were to increase fine arts opportunities. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. And I know under fiscal constraints, we all have to cut back. And how would you explain something like, pedagogically, rather than just taking something out, giving no explanation and dropping it, happened to our music program and some of the fine arts, particularly in the elementary schools where I feel it is very, very important. Right now, we're left with a situation of 780 students, have one teacher among 3 elementary schools. She sees them 35 minutes once every 6 days, which maybe is probably music awareness, 20 hours a week. That's all. It doesn't deal with instruction. We were never given the reasons why. So how would you handle, if we have to cut back on programs, the impact on education is one concern. And I'd like to hear your thoughts on why increasing fine arts opportunities at the elementary level is, well, in general,
yeah, I
schools
think
is good.
I think of it is in general, and something else that I inherited when I started was a fine arts goal that really hadn't gone anywhere for a couple of years, partly because of budget constraints. And so we put together a task force of very, very interested parents who had formed a boosters type of group in Framingham, and a group of our professional staff. And we got together and we first started to analyze what does great look like. What does it look? What are some of the best school systems in Massachusetts, and what are they doing? So we spent some time looking at other school systems in and around our area, and then put kind of a matrix together and said, well, this is kind of the delivery model that we see. These are the areas that we see instructionally. These are the opportunities that we give students around instrument lessons, for instance, at the elementary level, and these are the number of minutes that the really good school systems are utilizing. So, is it possible for us then to put a plan together to try to reach that? And the reality is that you are constrained by budgets, and we've been facing that constraint now. And are building our budget. Our budget, I compare it to a city budget, where our budget, we don't have a budget number yet. We're still working on our budget for next year, and we're one of the fortunate communities to be allocated an additional $1 million by the state yesterday in their joint resolution on local aid. So we're trying to figure out how much of that is the school systems and how much of that is the municipal side. But that'll all factor into how do we go about building the budget, and how do we go about making choices, making difficult choices in terms of what can we maintain and what we can't maintain. But we're making that a very public process. In fact, we have multiple meetings next week in order to have that discussion. and I think there will be difficult choices. But the choices will at least be backed up by some good reasoning. Now, we also recognize that not everyone will be happy in that. But I think if we have a model where we know where we'd like to be, it's just a matter of time before we believe we can get there. And, I continue to think that we should be out of these budget problems. I mean, that cycles, we've been through those cycles, multiple times now, in the late 70s and early 80s when we were cutting staff and closing schools, and then the late 80s and early 90s, and then, early in 2001, 2002, we actually should be cycling back out, but we don't seem to be. So, I don't know when that'll happen, but you always have to have a vision for what you'd like to do and where you'd like to be. And I think that vision really is designed by, what is out there that people are really pointing towards that looks great. In terms of what's happened in the past, I don't know if I can really comment on that in too much detail.
Katie?
Thank you, Dr. Morris. As a superintendent, what do you feel is a priority in a new community? And based on what you know about Foxborough,
Right.
what do you think of the priority would be for Foxborough? How do you go about putting a transition plan in place and determining what to do in your first 6 months?
Yeah, that's, I tend to look at that in certain ways, and I've spent some time, you mentioned the mentoring program we did for new superintendents when I was with the Mass Association of School Superintendents, and one of the kind of sound bites that we gave them for people to continue to think about is when you start, you look at an entry plan. How do you enter into a system? I mean, I do this with principals now, with new principals. How do you enter into a school? What do you do to enter in? And one of the things that you do is you really listen. And it gives you an opportunity to ask sometimes silly questions like, why do we do it this way? And how long has this been happening? And what does this look like? And how do you feel about it? What types of things do you think we could do better? And why? I think suburban school systems are focused on college. I think if the research is clear about anything, it's the difference between students who, one, graduate from high school and don't drop out. There's a difference economically there. But the difference between how far along they go through college. There's a difference between what your earning power is with an associate's degree, with a bachelor's degree, and with a graduate degree. And I think that's crystal clear, and I think we're in a time now when we have no right to say college isn't for everyone, or post-secondary school isn't for everyone. It is for everyone. And in order to be successful in this century, I think we need to be clearer about that. And I think particularly in suburban communities, that's a goal. I think the goal, I think the goal can be refined even more by there is success that people look at in terms of what types of colleges and universities are our graduating classes accepted into. Not necessarily where they end up, which is a whole different question. Where are they accepted? And there's some determinants there around quality and how many students are going to certain levels of school and all of that. And I think we probably also should look at where do they go from there. So that there's a quality indicator. And there's some places, there's some organizations that are doing a better job of that. But I think we're focused on college. And when I say that, as a parent of two college students right now, and my pocketbook is feeling the effects of that, but you really recognize that it's not just SAT scores. It also has to do with what does success look like. And so that's the kind of discussion in the entry plan. What does success look like? And then, and I believe it has to do with particularly at the high school level, students finding their niche. And sometimes their niche is in the arts. And sometimes their niche is in athletics. Sometimes it's in both. Sometimes it's in student government. Sometimes it's in community service. Sometimes it's in character education. And we hope it's a combination of that for many of our students. So I think that it's really focused on how do we figure out what successful people are like, And I think the other piece is, how do we make sure that all students understand that in order to thrive in a democratic society, there are certain behaviors you have to have. There are certain civic behaviors you have to have, and I think we need to be explicit about those. That you need to make a commitment to your community. That's what being a human being and an adult in this country is all about. So I think it's defining all of that. So when I say entry plan, that's the first conversation that takes place in a very open, multiple forums. I mean, I'm open to, whoever wants to meet, we meet. And I think that's important. I was able to do that in Medfield, and I was able to do that in Framingham. And then the entry plan then turns into what your strategic planning process looks like. What are the areas that you really need to focus on? What are your strengths, and how can we continue to build those? What are some weaknesses that we also need to build? All around, unfortunately, what are your financial constraints, and where can you go, and how quickly can you get there?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
My question it will involve curriculum. Dr. Jan Norton and Dr. Alardi have made tremendous strides in updating our curriculum, both in English and math. The reality is that Foxborough Public Schools remains behind in their curriculum development. The school committee has adopted a curriculum cycle, but given the facts of the matter are, we will still remain behind, even with major initiatives we have underway. We still have major initiatives that will need to be, cycles that need to be conducted. Even when we finish math and English, we still have social studies through to wellness. We need to catch up. I would like to ask, particularly where your most significant accomplishment that you're most proud of was around curriculum, particularly around math literacy. I'd like to ask, what specifically will you do to use your level 5 leadership to drive our curriculum, because that is our single greatest need. If you could just give some details as to what your approach and what you've accomplished.
Yeah, let me give you an example that maybe is analogous to your question. When I started in Medfield in 1995, we were just beginning. It was the first couple of years of education reform, and the curriculum frameworks were just being developed. And I worked with a consultant, actually, and we put together a process called curriculum-driven strategic planning. And one of the reasons that we did it was more to your point, and that is that we felt that we couldn't wait for every cycle to begin and finish. So we actually used a model that we put all the cycles in together, and we really tried to match up to the curriculum frameworks, and we tried to figure out, where are our weaknesses, at what grade levels or at what levels, or elementary, middle, and high school, and how are we making sure that the elementary to middle and the middle to high school are working together. So we put a number of people. We had a number of teachers. We had department heads who were involved. We had a number of teachers who volunteered who were involved, and we used a lot of our professional development time to pull all of that together. And I think it was successful in that when we were measuring it, and again, this was the early days of MCAS, and we were doing quite well. So if we could believe that the MCAS test was measuring the curriculum frameworks, then we were successful. And so that was one example. I would probably take a step back and want to really look more closely at what progress has been made here, and maybe modify something like that. But there are efforts that you can really work on most of it at the same time if you get, and some of this is just getting the right people in the right places, making sure that people are focused in certain curriculum areas. It sounds to me like, from what you just said, that there's some progress being made both in literacy and mathematics, and so it means now taking science, social studies, wellness, health, and physical education, everything, and kind of moving that along. I don't know exactly what the process is because I haven't really had a chance to look at it, but I think that's a model that I've worked on that seems to have been successful.
You also mentioned, Dr. Martis, that you're data-driven and that you had benchmarks around your curriculum. So if you could also, I love the model that you just described in your approach, and that answers my question. But could you share with us some of the data-driven benchmarks that you used to know that you were successful in the curriculum that you developed, whether in Framingham or Medfield?
Yeah, we've become more data-driven, I think, in Framingham in the last couple of years. We're piloting a software package called School Brains that it really allows us to input assessment data, and I could probably take a step back by a year or a year and a half. We developed some of our local data, but it also allows us to analyze MCAS and any of our other more standardized assessment. We do some developmental reading assessments and literacy. But we've developed our benchmarks, more local benchmarks in mathematics. And given that the Framingham School is a very sharing organization, I'm sure that they would be willing to share their information and their local benchmarks with this school system. Certainly, as I was walking out the door, they would be very interested in doing that, I'm sure. So there's no sense in reinventing the wheel if some organization has already done it. So it would be interesting to look at, because I think that we just didn't want to rely on MCAS only, given that it's one single test given at one time, and the fact that, and I've kind of railed about this publicly over the years, that it's very difficult to give a test in May and get the results back in September, October, or even in the early days, November, and be able to really use it that well. So.
We use the Terra Novas. Would you be willing
Terra
to
Nova,
comment
sure.
on what your thoughts are about that standardized testing, or what other standardized testing?
Yeah, I mean, I think many of them are fine. I mean, I haven't had experience with Terra Nova specifically, but we use some California achievement testing in the early days in Medfield. I remember the days of using the Iowa Test of Basic Skills here as a teacher and administrator. So as long as they're tied, and I think the key is how tied are they to the frameworks, and how much do they predict, success. I think those are the key. And how much diagnosis can you utilize? How much data can you pull out of them so that you can diagnose what's going on?
The worst part of being number 5 is everybody else has kind of asked some of what you wanted to know.
Now, come on, Brenda, we know you've got good
I'm
questions.
coming through this. It's like, all right, so I'll ask a different question. What role do you believe the staff should play in decision-making, and how have you involved your staff in the decision-making process?
Yeah, it's. I think it was a little easier in a smaller district in Medfield, because I really got a chance to know everyone, and that's really an attraction here. Some people I already know, which is nice. But in a system as large as the one I'm in now, I really use the principals and department heads and directors and others to kind of make those connections. Although my style of leadership is really, I tend to wander around a lot. I guess it's kind of a odd way to say it, I guess, but it part of some Drucker's work and Search of Excellence and all that. I do a lot of that so that I get to know people pretty well, and I know that they'll get to know me and trust me if they're not only telling me the good things that they think I want to hear, and sometimes in the early days of being a superintendent, that's what the people tell you, all the nice things they want you to hear. But when you really get to know them, they'll tell you the things that they really are, most hopeful that things can get better. And so I work closely with principals. I'm very visible. I hope that people believe that I'm very open in terms of dialogue and conversation, and I want to hear how people feel about. So I think there's a huge role for the faculty in terms of decision making, and I would believe that principals feel that. My 10 years as a principal, I think I said this, I was a terrific principal the years I had a great faculty, and we had a good dialogue and interchange, and we were really working on improving the school and making a difference in the lives of kids and families. So I think that part of it needs to be very open and very collaborative.
Good. All right.
Yes, one of the things that you submitted with your materials was a copy of your last 3 evaluations. And for anyone that's in the audience, those are over there in the corner.
Right.
I found those to be very enlightening, very interesting, very open and honest approach.
Right.
Often people submit letters of reference, but who's going to find someone that doesn't like them to write a letter of reference? So
I do have a list of people somewhere that don't like me.
Right. We all do. We all do. So I found that to be very helpful because it's 3 years' worth of dialogue. So my question centers around goals and objectives and how you and your committee went about setting those goals and objectives that are listed in that evaluation. I would like you to talk about the performance process that you're used to and how that involves the school committee, yourself, the community, whatever it might be. And finally, we've had a history in Foxborough of building contracts with automatic raises regardless of performance. So I'd like to hear your philosophy on whether or not you are a pay-for-performance person or whether or not you're a we put in automatic raises into our contracts person.
I've never actually had an automatic raise in a contract that I've signed. So I tend to renegotiate every year based on performance,
okay,
and based on evaluations and so I'm very, very comfortable with that. What I've done, actually, even in Medfield, but certainly in Framingham, we took the goals when we started. We took the goals that were on the table that the previous superintendent had used, and we reworked them and reformulated them. I used the retreat process with the school committee. Have had some success doing that, where we actually went to a facility in Framingham, and we spent a Friday evening. We had dinner. We had a Friday evening meeting and an all-day Saturday meeting, and we've done that a number of times now. I inherited that process in some sense, but I had already done some of that work when I was in Medfield, so I was very comfortable with it. And it really is a review of the goals. So it's not just me reviewing the goals, but the directors and others would come and talk about where we are and what we're doing, and then it's a matter of publicly at school committee meetings early in the fall of discussing the goals and reformatting them as we go along, and then gaining agreement with a formal vote. These are the goals that we're working on this year, and each year we would have 3 or 4, and I think, and I've tried to say to the school committee, and this is some of the old one-minute manager, that once you grab that 5th goal, figure out which one of the top 4 you're not going to do anymore, because you're probably not going to have time to do it. So focus in on, and this was actually one of the accolades that the Center for Education Policy at UMass said. We stayed with the goals, we maintained the goals, we agreed upon them, and we focused on them. So it wasn't a, I'd like this goal this year because that's something new and innovative, and so we stayed with the goals, and I think that's why we've made some success. As we're moving along through the year at school committee meetings, we have public presentations on how are we doing. Where are we now? Where's our math goal? What is it? We not only back up our goals, we back up our goals with action plans, and then we review the action plans. Where are we with this? And in some cases, we haven't achieved as much as we wanted to for whatever reasons, but we publicly talk about that. And so it's really a cycle, a yearly cycle. I've moved this past year, moved the committee because I thought waiting until September was too late, and it didn't give us a chance to really refine them during the summer when we really had some time to do that. So we actually had our retreat last year in June, right at the end of the year. Similar format, and we were then able to adopt the goals earlier in September than waiting until later in the fall. So it's a cycle. It's very public, and I do think it works.
Is your evaluation, are your evaluation results public as well?
The evaluation results are public. We actually, this is very interesting. I'm not sure I agree with all of this. The individual evaluations of the school committee.
Right.
See, I think you're a body, and you come together with a composite. The new Attorney General, Martha Coakley, who for a long time was the Middlesex County, where Framingham is, the Middlesex County District Attorney, had a different belief and felt that everyone's individual evaluations was public record. Now, I tend to disagree with that, but when the press called and said we want the individual ones, we gave them to them. two issues happened. One, in 1 year, one of my committee members gave me all perfect scores and took a beating in the newspaper because how could anyone be perfect?
Right.
At the same time, last year, one of my members questioned whether I should have called a snow day or not in the record, which wouldn't have been part of the composite because it wasn't part of the majority. So I'm not sure the individual ones. The composite ones, they're open. You can take a look at them, and I'm very comfortable with that. I think
Well, they were very helpful to me to gain insight into how your board, for 3 years, and boards change and personalities change, but there's a real consistency in those evaluations.
Right.
I hope people take the time to look at those because they gave me a lot of insight into who you are, what you've accomplished, and how you built really a team, not only a team within the school, but a team with the school committee, a team with the community, and there's a real sense of leadership. Thank you.
We're starting to run out of questions. He's covering so much so well. We were quite lax for a few years on long-range strategic planning. We are now starting to refocus on that, as we should. Your benchmarking study, you said there were very few towns in the Commonwealth really that did such a study. Could you explain the benchmarking study
Yeah,
that
actually,
you brought forward?
it was interesting. It was something I inherited as a resolution at town meeting from 2 years before I started. And we were having a difficult time getting it off the ground because school systems tend not to benchmark. It's more of a business model. And it was really driven by a town meeting member, a group of town meeting members who really wanted the police and fire department to benchmark, actually. That was the part of it. But we took a lead, and we were trying to find a vendor or an organization that would do this. And we actually found a local person who is one of the half dozen people or less that actually understand school finance in Massachusetts. And he wanted to take it on as a project in his organization as a small consulting firm. And so he worked with us. We put a small task force together of school committee members and some town meeting members who were interested in this. And we looked at, our benchmarking study looked at MCAS. We just looked at Massachusetts communities. We looked at MCAS scores, and we looked at, the other criteria was what was the median income in the community, so that we could compare Framingham with other communities. So, we had Stoughton is in our group, Holbrook is in our group, Amherst Pelham is in our group, Woburn is in our group, and I think there were 19. And so we looked at how well are we doing in terms of achievement based on the population that we serve. We tried to look at English language learners and the work that we do around language acquisition in English, and we found that we were doing so much better than anyone else that we couldn't benchmark back to anyone because most of those communities are much more urban than Framingham is. So our 15% English language learners, we couldn't find too many other communities that were in that. You'd have to go, much higher than that in more urban areas. So I thought it was a really good activity. We've, quite frankly, because we need to go to another level, and we didn't have the funds to do it this past year. We actually put it on our goal sheet, but I think we're just going to hold it for another year. But the initial study, as I said to town meeting, the executive summary of the executive summary essentially said, we spend money, it's well spent, and the achievement results are there for all of the kids, which was good. I mean,
Dr. Martis, you just talked about how you engage faculty and staff. Here in Foxborough, as you probably know, we have a community of a lot of very concerned, active parents, community members who want to be involved and want to understand how the school system is working, how they're meeting the goals of a lot of the things that we discussed, academic achievement. How do you engage parents, community leaders, and other stakeholders in discussion and a regular dialogue? I want to know what your thoughts are.
Well, I'd be interested. I think each community, at least in my experience, each community tends to do it a little different. So I'll tell you some of my experiences. when I was in Medfield, we had a monthly meeting with all of our parent leaders, often PTO presidents and other officers, and we also engaged faculty in that, faculty leaders. So we had parents and faculty together, and we would typically develop agendas in the beginning. What do we want to talk about during the year? What presentations what do we want to hear more about? What presentations do we want to make? And all of that. In Framingham, because it's a larger system, I meet on the first Wednesday of each month, so I actually had this meeting yesterday, with the PTO presidents and others. So it's not just the presidents. I invite past presidents and anyone who would like to meet. And it's the same process. We have agenda items. And in fact, we were talking about yesterday, we were talking about a wellness policy that we're developing and that the school committee has looked at in the first reading, and what we were going to try to do with PTOs so that they would be more informed about some grant writing opportunities and some other things that we think we can do to push the policy forward and to become much better. So I'm open to however that works here. I've had forums, I meet with PTOs, I've spoken at PTO meetings, and if it's topic specific, great. If it's just an open forum and people want to hear what's going on. I actually have explicitly said to the PTO presidents, you're my mouthpiece in the important areas where dialogue takes place, on the soccer fields, on the baseball fields, the basketball courts, in the auditorium, everywhere, during the plays. So when people say, gee, this isn't really going that well, they'll say, well, I just heard the superintendent say, he said exactly the opposite. This is going well. So some of the rumors that, tend to get out in I think every community I've worked in, and sometimes I tell people, sometimes I start those rumors in Easton myself as a parent just to see what people have to say. But, it's just engaging the community and having people feel comfortable, and looking at the leaders, the parent leaders, is a good start. And then I'd be open to meeting with whoever wants to meet.
Thank you.
Kate?
You are a very lucky man in that we have an outstanding administrative team here. It is a team that has come together in cohesiveness and has done incredible things in the last couple of years. But they have come together based on humongous change in the last year.
Sure.
And my question for you is, what specifically will you do? You've described your management style to us, your leadership style.
Right.
What will you do to make sure that this administrative team stays motivated and, in fact, is retained in the school system?
Right. That's a good question. I think a couple of things come to mind right away. One is obviously me getting to know them and trying to figure out what their strengths and weaknesses are, and hopefully being able to mentor people. I mean, as I've said earlier, I've been mentored by some of the best people that I can think of, and I believe that at this point in my life I have an opportunity to give back because I've had a lot of different experiences. So I would want to do that. I think my experience as a principal is helpful in that, and that I've been a principal in different places and been able to lead schools. I understand that, and I think there's a real value to that. But I also want the team to come together, and so I think the meeting schedule and the topics that are discussed, I think, are important as a group. I mean, I last year, and I tend to do a summer retreat a day with the administrators in Framingham, and we focused this past year on some training that I had been involved in around adaptive leadership. And we looked at, we all read the book called Leadership on the Line by Ron Heifetz and Marty Linsky from the Kennedy School of Government. And they talk about, looking at leadership in different ways. So engaging in that discussion, I hope, builds camaraderie and having people share ideas. But I think it also builds, we're all in this together, and this is how leadership works, and this is how difficult leadership can be at certain times. But if we're looking at it in certain ways, that's important. And there's some. So when we have, a difficult problem, we often go back to, okay, what would we do based on what we've read? Some kind of common things that, when you're looking at things day to day, sometimes, you can't see the forest for the trees. You're just kind of immersed in it. And as the book described, get off the dance floor and get up on the balcony and look over and see now what the problem looks like. One of the things that I always look at, keep your friends close and your enemies closer, so that, you really know what people are thinking about and how they're thinking. So a lot of that kind of nurturing and leadership, I'm constantly learning more about it and have a strong interest in it and very willing to share that with others. But I think, the team understanding that we are all in this together, we work together, we can help each other if we're willing to share some of those issues and problems that we're facing. I think that's a lot of it. Some of that's just nurturing.
If I may, just to follow up, and excellent suggestions on the team. You mentioned individually the idea of mentoring.
Mm-hmm.
You've been exposed to a lot of leadership development in
Yes.
education. We
Right.
have also, our administrative team have recently had the opportunity over the last several years to participate in a program. In your experience, what do you think are the best leadership training programs that you've experienced that you would want our group to also have?
Right. I'm very, I'm now very interested in the kind of the adaptive style and looking at leadership and having more people own it than just the leader, but having groups of people understand, what leadership is and sharing ideas and sharing problems and concerns and trying to come up with solutions. I think that's something that I'm, spending a lot more time thinking about. I had mentioned earlier that, that book, Good to Great. I can see that from a school level. I certainly look at it now from a district level. One of the things that always comes to mind is the educational analogy in the book, at least from my vantage point. I actually had a chance to hear Jim Collins speak a few years ago, and it was just terrific. But getting the right people on the bus and the wrong people off the bus is important, and it seems simple in some ways. But the second part that I think is the key to greatness is getting the right people in the right seats, making sure that people understand their roles and they know that we're all kind of moving together in this. And I think that's really a key, and it's something that's always in the back of my mind, and I'm always wondering, do I have the right people in the right seats? Is this the right way that we're moving? So, and I hope that principals are looking at that, and department heads are looking at their own department and looking at those kinds of things.
You mentioned the leadership program at UMass. Do you feel that that's as strong as, say, the Center for Creative Leadership, which I believe both are the adaptive style? Is that
right?
Would
I
you-
don't know. I'm not sure. I think I know people at a lot of them, and I think it would be really what is the fit that makes sense for us at this point in time.
Makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
This year, we took a little bit of a different approach when we presented our budget. We tried to have all the principals, department heads, people who had something to bring forward to the committee on a one-to-one basis. They sat like you're sitting right now, and we asked them, if we had more money, what would you wish for, type of thing. And I think it was very informative to the public. It gave them a great insight because we were trying to show what it takes to run a great system. And sometimes when we present a budget, what we're giving is the watered-down version of what we can afford.
Right.
And I think it was very important for us to bring forward the people who were directly related with building the budget and presenting to the public. Would you be adverse to something like that, or do you think it's a good idea?
No, I think, what I've actually that was more of my experience in Medfield, because we were actually, during the mid-'90s, we were in a little more of a growth time. My experience in Framingham has been reducing budgets most every year. And what I've been more adverse to is presenting that public pain. So I've been, we've really made presentations less around wish lists and what we'd like, because I think what sometimes happens with wish lists is that when you can't have them, you feel like you're cutting them, and you've never had them, so you're really not cutting them. And I think the public sometimes feels that we should be here and we're not. So I think it depends on the economic time. But, we've become more open with budgets, and we've kind of engaged the community more in the last year around, what we want to hold on to as much as anything else, what we really believe in. And I think that's been helpful. That process has evolved. But the last couple of years, it's been less of that and more. We've been a little bit more, I hate to say surgical in this, in terms of how to maintain what we have, and cutting more on the edges than really cutting in the whole. And I think we've done a very good job of maintaining class size and the integrity of what goes on in the classrooms. But I'm worried now that we can't sustain that. So, but the public part of it, I think the public needs to know more about how it's developed, what the budget looks like, how it's spent out during the year, the number of people that we have, and all of that.
Well, one of the other things we instituted this year is a monthly budget statement that we're making public.
Yeah, we do that.
And I think what will be good about it in the long run is, you hate to get to the end of the year and find out that you have this huge surplus, and,
Right.
What do you do now? So as far as asking the principals, the department heads, what is your wish list? So that
Right.
if we see something going along and we see that we have a little bit extra money, I'd rather us try to put something in or make up something at this point that we were lacking than waiting till the end of the year and having children lose out on things.
Right.
So I think it gives us a better idea of where we are, where we're going, and what we might have along the way. So I think, it's something new for us, so hopefully.
Yeah, it
sustain
is. I'll go back to Larry's original question. It was one of the best things that we did was doing those monthly presentations. We then could trend, where do we see some spots that we're concerned about? Where do we see that we're not spending out a certain amount of money and for different reasons? We all hope that energy is a little bit better, different other areas, and then to strategically target those so that you can make a difference now rather than later. That makes sense. Yeah.
We have a question from the audience, and I'll put it in at this point. Can Dr. Mattis give 2 examples of policies unique to Framingham that he has led the Framingham School Committee to approve?
I don't know. I'm not sure there's one policy that would be unique to Framingham that would be, that would be different than most policies. That maybe the wellness policy. We hope that we're a little bit ahead in terms of, wellness programs that we're initiating, and it's kind of spurred some grant work, and I mean that one I guess comes to mind, more than anything else. We typically review policies, update them according to, any new standards in the law and any changes that we see. But we typically haven't, we changed. There's a lot of discussion, and we had we didn't have a set date for kindergarten entrance. When I first started, we set a date. It's a little bit of angst around that, and I was born a day after or something, and I still should be able to go. And, so it's just, so we haven't. I don't think any of that is unique to us, though. I don't think we've done anything that is typically unique that I could point to.
Just more ongoing.
It's just ongoing, and we have a policy subcommittee of the school committee that does that on a pretty regular basis. So.
Could I just ask a follow-up question regarding policy? I know I'm out of turn here, but what do you view as the role of the superintendent regarding the development of policy and the implementation of policy?
I think it's the implementation of policy. I think there's a lot of policy development that is also pretty standard. There's a lot of policy, and I think I read that did you engage MASC in your policy? I did the same thing in Medfield, and a lot of it took a couple of years, and it was a lot of discussion, it was a lot of update, but we felt at the end we really finished. We had policies that were updated regularly, and then just being part of that organization, you end up with with new. But I haven't been, and maybe at this level it would be different, but in a larger system, I haven't been that involved in the development of policy. More the implementation and the discussion of what it looks like at the end, but not so much in the development.
You talked about the importance of getting the right people on the bus and the right people off the bus. Mm-hmm. And in every new job, there'll be some people that end up leaving the bus.
Mhm.
You also talked about what's really important in the book is getting the right people in the right seats. I think where many superintendents fail in the state is then getting the bus moving.
Right.
And it takes so long to get the right people, the
Right,
bus is
right.
not moving at all.
Right.
And when you look around the state, at any given point in time, there's 30 to 40 searches for superintendents.
Right.
Most of the searches that I've looked at not generally get 14 to 16 people
Right.
apply for jobs. We had 14, so pretty much in the norm.
It is in the norm.
And in the 5 communities around us that have hired new superintendents, they've hired people that have never been a superintendent.
Correct.
In your particular case, you are known across the state as one of the top superintendents in the state of Massachusetts. You are encouraged to apply to many different positions, and recently you have withdrawn your name from several high-profile opportunities. So explain for us why Foxborough? What is it about Foxborough that has your curiosity so high that you're here tonight and working for an appointment in Foxborough?
Good, thank you. That's a good question, and one that I was thinking might come up at some point in time. Yeah, you know, I'm at a point in my career which is I tell people, I tell search consultants that I talk to, I know all of them. I used to guide them at some points in time. I actually tried to place 3 or 4 other superintendents in Framingham before their search failed the first time, and they ended up with me. At the end, I tell people I think I still have the record for applying and being appointed 11 days. They broke their search. They couldn't find anyone. The consultant who I had been working with and talking to different candidates said, well, you are interested in being a superintendent again? I said, yes. He said, well, this is a great opportunity. Why don't you take a look at it? So I ended up doing that, and because I know all the consultants well, you know, they call me, and you know, for the first 3 years, I said, you know, no, I'm not interested in anything. And then I started to say, well, you know, maybe I'll start to look at a few different jobs, and I look at it, and I'm very public about this, about what I believe is the fit in terms of my interest. You know, why am I interested in this? And I looked at a few different couple that became more public, but a few others too, and felt that it wasn't an interesting job for me for different reasons, my own fit at this point in time. And you know, I've always had kind of a special place in my heart for this community. It really has given me a lot, and I'm very much appreciative of that. And so when this position opened, I said, gee, you know, this is, you know, if after 5 years I can say, this place is much better because we all work together. That's a terrific way for me to end my career in Massachusetts. And I say that, end my career in Massachusetts, because I'm not sure I'll ever end my career. But, you know, I will get to a point in time when it won't be financially beneficial for me to work here anymore. And that's just the way the retirement system works. But if I could do that after, you know, a 5-year period and say, listen, this place is better, and we are all working together, and we're all very proud of what happens in this community, because the school system is the driver in the community. And if we can say that, then that's very satisfying for me. So I've been able to do a lot of other things that have been interesting, and I feel very proud about that. But this is a particular interest of mine. And, you know, I've had people that have said to me, you know, we thought you were then tracked to go to Boston or to be the commissioner or to do this or to do that. And, you know, it's nice to be at this point in my career when I can, you know, be a little bit more, you know, looking at, you know, different interesting things that are more interesting to me than, you know, others may think. So,
All right, thank you.
you're welcome.
Does anybody else have any more questions? Or-
I do.
Okay.
I'd like to talk a little bit with you and get your thoughts on special education.
Sure.
With your depth and breadth of experience, you've had to deal with special education.
Right.
And how do you make sure, if you could share with us some of the things that you did to make sure that the school districts you led
Right.
offered not only the proper services, but
Right.
made sure that they were effective. I'd like to hear a little bit about that and
Sure.
what you would do to, as the leader of this organization, to drive our special education to a level of excellence that will take it from, in your words, good to great.
Well, I think initially I'd have to take a look at what are the programs that we have in the district, what are the affiliations that we have. I look at this in kind of a few different levels. What are the programs that we have in the school, in schools and in the school system? What are the collaborative programs that we are proud of, and what types of programs do we need to build? And then, what other programs do we have that we affiliate with as well in terms of, out-of-district placements and other things. And this has been something that's been on my mind for a while because we're facing more students moving into Framingham than we've ever faced, and we've been trending this, and the trend is heading in a direction that is extremely costly. But at the same time, I've said publicly to many different groups, and even said last night as we had a joint meeting with the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen around some deficits that we're running in this program, that we have a moral obligation to make sure that we meet the needs. The public part of public education, to me, is that we make sure that we meet the needs of kids who reside in the community, and that's very important. Much of that is building trust with the faculty and parents around what are the specific needs and how are we going to address those needs in the most effective way that we can. Obviously looking at the law in the least restrictive environment and all of that. So, without knowing specifically what types of programs are here, it's hard to say that. We've been very proud in Framingham of building programs. We've been identifying a number of students turning age 3 on the range of the autism spectrum. And we've built our own programs in the district in order to meet those needs, partly because it's financially, fiscally responsible, but also it's the right thing to do to keep the kids in the town, and rather than send them to other places. So it is. I mean, I've been involved at different levels as a principal, sitting in meetings and signing educational plans, and it can be contentious at times when we disagree about what we're seeing in terms of a diagnosis and what we believe is the best way to offer services. So, I'd have to look and see how we're doing it here and how good we are and what we need to do to get better at this and how would we get to great. But I think it's not just the community that can do it. It has to be the relationships with the collaboratives and the relationships with other schools that you find important so that, all students' needs can be met.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Martz.
Okay, do you have anything? Larry, do you have anything?
Yeah, I have a couple of other questions. You have led a major renovation at the high school in Framingham. Our high school was nearly 40 years old. We have an outside consultant working with us right now to identify what are we going to need to do and in what order. For instance, we've been told that if we do something over $100,000, I think it's $100,000, we have to then upgrade all the doorknobs and everything else from that standpoint. So understanding what we need to do and in what order we need to do it, and recognizing we can't say to the kids, why don't you take a year off while we fix the school and come on back. So we face lots of challenges. You obviously faced similar challenges.
Yes.
You faced a community that was stretched in terms of their budget and in terms of dollars. So talk to us a little bit about your high school project, how you went about determining the needs, how you sold it to the community, and how you oversaw the success of it.
I actually just oversaw the success of it. I didn't sell it.
Okay.
It was 3 or 4 years before I came on board. I inherited the end of the first year, which was, and this is fairly typical, I think, in particularly in high schools and particularly in large high schools. When you're renovating, the architects often tell you that it's a 3-year phase-in, so each summer should be a different phase. Well, when I came on board, that August phase was now going to be November of the next year. So I tell people it was the best 3-year project that took 4 years. And that's fairly typical I think, in building. So it's a matter of looking at multiple phases. And we did work on the entire building, on different parts of the building, and we had to move a lot of classrooms around, we had to move a lot of faculty around, we had to change department offices and departments, and I give the high school administration a tremendous amount of credit. We didn't miss a day of school. We had students that were very well versed in fire alarms because we had a number of them for some reason in terms of, you know, the planning and the execution of it. But what we found was that people were very resilient, particularly students were very resilient. As long as we knew that we had their schedule and they were comfortable with the schedule and they knew how to get from one place to another. Now, in some of the really difficult weather, when we said you have to go outside to get to this area, that was a challenge. But we worked through it, and I think one of the things that we've pointed to is during that time is when we became a Compass school at Framingham High School, which was a designation by the Department of Education for educational achievement, as they were measuring it through MCAS, and a Vanguard school at the same time. We were one of two high schools in Massachusetts at that time that had been both, that had been designated both. And it was during that phase-in, it was during the construction, during that 3 or 4 years of construction. So it's a lot of planning, and it's a lot of communication, and it's a lot of understanding that we're all in this together. And at this point in time, you know, we're finished. We had a terrific rededication of the high school, and people are feeling very good about, and we publicly talk about state-of-the-art performing arts center, state-of-the-art library media center, state-of-the-art science lab, state-of-the-art television studio. I mean, we talk a lot publicly about that because we know that it took a lot of time and a lot of effort. But it really is a lot of planning. The beginning phase, I mean, in terms of, you know, I don't know the extent of this in terms of school building assistance and all of that. It was a little easier sell in Framingham because it's about 7 or 8 years ago they instituted a voluntary desegregation plan, which immediately kicked in a 90% reimbursement from the state. So it was a fairly easy financial sell to the community. And $60 million, the community puts up $6 million, and the state puts up the rest.
Okay. Two other very brief questions. Number one, how would you describe yourself using just one word?
I don't know. Is that fair? I couldn't do it.
I hope collaborative.
Okay, excellent. And the last question is, what question, you've been through a lot of interviews in your lifetime, and you've had some very tough questions. What's the toughest question you've been asked that we haven't asked tonight?
Well, you did ask why do you want this job when everyone thinks you should be doing something different. That was a good question. I don't know. I think that, you know, there's always the kind of framed around, you know, weakness. What are your challenges? What do you struggle with? You know, those kinds of things. And so I think those are always the questions that.
So would you like to answer that one then?
And I think people would probably describe this. You know, at the same time, I very much try to be collaborative. I think as I do this work longer and longer, I become less patient around results, and I think that sometimes gives people some cause for concern. But you know, I think it's kind of in that way. I like to see progress made, and sometimes I have to step back a little bit and say, okay, we need more time, or maybe we need to shift rather than. So I think sometimes it's more around that.
Well, I think bringing a sense of urgency to education is important.
Yeah, I do too.
And I think as you talked about benchmarks, we've had some interesting debates and dialogues around business versus education and where the lines are between the two, how to benchmark, and a sense of urgency. So that's been very helpful for me. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anybody else have anything else? Okay. Would you like to consider this candidate?
I would so be happy to make a motion that we proceed, that we move to a vote to accept Dr. Martis as a candidate and to begin negotiations. But you rephrase it if you need to.
However it's supposed to be phrased.
Probably what we need is a motion to accept Dr. Martis as our new superintendent, and I would like a second.
So
Seconded?
Okay, everybody wants to make a second.
Yeah, we
All
are.
right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Katie, do you have something you'd like to say?
Yes, I do. Give me a moment here.
While Katie's looking for that paperwork, would you entertain a motion to have you as the chair begin the negotiations?
Yes.
Effective immediately?
Yes, I would.
Yes.
And I would like very much to have Larry join me in that conversation with Dr. Martis, and if we could just have a consensus of the board to move in that direction.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, did you find your paper?
I did. I want to publicly acknowledge and thank the search committee for all of their hard work, careful examination, and diligent efforts in the superintendent search. I truly believe the community owes these individuals who volunteered for this committee their thanks for the challenging task that was placed before them. This committee displayed professionalism. They were focused, very thoughtful throughout the entire process. They brought their experience, their expertise to execute the charter that was placed before them, to bring forward a candidate who would exemplify those qualities we need of the next leader of the Foxborough district, which we're looking at right now, I'm happy to say. The search committee selected the candidate that we felt was best qualified for Foxborough and its students. And this was accomplished through the collaboration with the community and included the focus groups and online surveys. I thought it was very important to talk about the search committee tonight, and I just want to conclude by saying that it was a real pleasure to serve on this committee and an honor to work with the other members. And on behalf of the school committee, I want to thank you for your service.
Yes.
The best part about being chairman, you get to go last. I think the majority of the search committee is here, and I really would like you to stand up. I want you to know that it has been, without a doubt, a pleasure to serve with each and every one of you. When I first started looking at how many people to put on the search committee, and we listened to Glenn Kuchar, and he said put 5 or 7. I've been married to my husband for 38 years, and when I told him I was going to put about a dozen people on a committee, he thought I was out of my mind. And he said, how are you ever going to get that many people to agree on anything? But when I looked at the applications for the search committee, and I tried to take a step back and look at it and understand that we all have a vested interest in the school system, and that it was very important for me to include as many people as possible. I'm very pleased that Angela Forster Davis had jumped on board. She was a tremendous asset. One of the committee members after our first meeting pulled me inside and said, can I talk to you for a minute? And I was, yes. And he goes, where did you find her? And I was like, oh, my God, what's he going to say? And he goes, she's incredible. And she was incredible. She kept us on target. She helped me with trying to fill out forms and some direction because she was so astute at what we needed to do. And I can't thank you enough. So I really would like the members of the search committee that are here to stand up and take a bow. I am so proud of you. One of the things that that really touched me in a lot of ways was that we came together as a committee, and I know we left as friends, and that's very important for me. So at this point, I would like to have one of our senior members here who knows you from the community stand up and welcome you home. Given a message from actually my sister that she had called and said, you know, that Chris Mattis is looking for a job, and I really think we should try and get him here. So you were right on target, and thank you very much.
I've known him since 1955.
Long time.
He was a toddler.
I understand you were neighbors back then.
Neighbors, that's right. A couple of houses away from each other, that's exactly right. And I had an opportunity to teach your son. I was his
I know.
fifth grade teacher.
He actually turned my son around and made him think that school was important.
Well, that's the type of person we're looking for.
And it had nothing to do with corporal punishment or anything. Let's get that on the record right
He loved you as a person that could throw a football at
Right,
recess.
that's right.
And that's what he lacked, because he was raised with 5 girls.
That's right, you're right, Dory.
He used to say to me, "Why did God send me this many girls?"
He's done quite well for himself. He sure has. That's great.
Okay.
Thank you.
He enjoyed you as a coach as well.
That's right, yeah. That's why I coached on the football team.
A lot of different things.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
The superintendent position is one that is sometimes on the hot seat, and it deals with a lot of tough issues. This committee this evening took a vote to invite Dr. Mattis to be our new superintendent. I would like to ask him if he would like to entertain the negotiations with us in going forward, because I believe that it's important to get him to commit if possible. And because with someone of this caliber, I would like for us to move fairly quickly. But while we could do that privately, we try to do things very publicly here in town. And I would just like to know whether or not you would like to meet with Martha and I and discuss negotiations.
I absolutely would. I am thrilled that you voted to appoint me as the superintendent, and I can't wait to get started.
Thank you so much. Motion to adjourn. If anybody would like to shake our new superintendent's hand, please
So
feel free.
move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn. Second. Okay, second. All in favor? Thank you.